You are listening to Faithless Brewing, a Magic the Gathering podcast for the Spike Rogue. Each week we design new decks for tournament play. We put our creations to the test and share our findings on the air. The invasion of the multiverse is underway, and that means it's time for our full set review. We take a hard look at the battle mechanic and the best ways to break the siege in Modern and Pioneer. This is part 1 of our Brewer's Guide to March of the Machine. Thanks for listening and enjoy the show. Hello and welcome to the Faithless Brewing podcast. I'm your host, Dan Schriever, coming to you from sunny Austin, Texas. And I'm joined today all the way from Buenos Aires, Argentina. You know him as Mord to Light. It's Emmy Sagasti. Emmy, welcome.
Heyo, how's it going, Dan? All the way from Austin, Texas.
So we're here today to kick off a brand new season of Faithless Brewing. New set means new season, and this is season 18, March of the Machine.
We finally got to MAM, and it seems to be firing on all cylinders. First time we have seen a new card in how long? A new card type in how long?
New card or new card type? Like, this is the first spoiler I've seen since yesterday. The first preview season since last week.
This is the first spoilers of a new expansion since 14 hours ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, we got a new card type for the first time in 16 years. Wow.
My goodness. I don't think it was worth it, personally. We'll get into that.
Oh, look at that.
Should not
look
have
at
been,
the spice.
These could have just been enchantments. They know they could have been enchantments. But anyway.
But we needed Tarmogoyf to become a 9/10.
We'll get through all that. We got a lot to get through. Man, they are just blitzing us with previews. Looks like they're going to do the whole set in 7 days.
They went from no previews to having all previews in 7 days. So they're just firing up on all cylinders. You check Mythic spoilers every few hours and you have 5 new cards to look at.
So Mord and I have done our best to impose some order on this just flood of new cards. We're definitely not going to get through it all today. We're going to have to break this up. Probably today's episode will come out on Friday. We'll do the Monday episode, maybe next Friday's episode. See if we can get through all of the good ones for Modern and Pioneer in 2 or 3 shows, and we'll just dive right in.
Exactly. So, where do we start? What's the first point of impact? If I had to guess, it would be battles, right?
Yeah, we have new mechanics. So 4 new mechanics in March of the Machine. I think it makes sense to just review them all at the top, especially because battle is a brand new card type, the 9th card type. So Mord, please explain what is a battle or a siege, and how does it work?
Alright, so a siege is a type of battle where you slowly deprive your opponent of resources by sieging. Alright, that's not the answer. So a siege, it's the type that has been provided to the first type of battles we have seen. Right now, siege is a type of battle the same way Golem is a type of artifact, and there might be future battles in the future. They're just setting up the tone. However, the only type we have right now is the battle siege, in which when you put it into the battlefield, you choose an opponent that's going to protect this battle, this permanent, and you have to try and destroy it in a way, but not actually destroy it, just remove the loyalty counters from it, or defense counters as they're calling it. So for example, the card we have here as our first example, Invasion of Kaladesh, a red and a blue for a battle siege that has 4 counters. When it enters the battlefield, you put a 1/1 colorless Thopter, and once you're able to remove those 4 counters via burn spells, combat damage, or abilities that allow you to remove counters, this spell will exile itself and then cast on the other side. So you have to deal 4 damage to transform this into the other side. That's like the TLDR.
So it transforms, although it does technically have to exile and get cast. It will enter as a new game object. It will get stopped by Teferi Time Reveler because this is being cast during the resolution of the trigger, which is very awkward.
Yeah.
But essentially you get a bonus thing on the backside. The bonus thing is often a creature, but not always. It can just be a spell, this one that Moore just read out, Invasion of Kaladesh, turns into a vehicle. There's one that turns into a planeswalker. So the backside could really be completely anything you can imagine. The front side, right? The front side is more or less a spell. Is that fair to say? Most of them cast some sort of spell effect.
Yeah. I mean, it's like a bad enchantment enter the battlefield most times. Like, it's an instant or sorcery spell attached to an ETB. And it tends to be around that value, right? Some of them are undercosted, some are overcosted, but most of them seem like on value with an instant or sorcery of the same cost.
That was what I initially thought, but I wanted to start with Invasion of Kaladesh because this is definitely not on rate, right? 2 mana for a 1/1 Thopter. I mean, this raises a lot of questions for me. Like, it's one of the cheaper battles, so the cheaper ones tend to be more playable, more versatile. We can actually imagine ourselves doing whatever the thing is, but it's not obvious to me what we're supposed to do with this to make it a good use of our time and resources, right? Like, I'm definitely not happy to spend blue and a red for a Thopter. I'll just say that straight up.
Yeah, never. But the next one is not quite as bad. Like, this is an example of one that's severely overcosted. But right down below it, it's just decent.
Right, so the next one, Invasion of Azgol, which I've never heard of this place, but I think is an interesting example of the other heuristic. As Mord said, often the battle is just more or less an on-rate sorcery. So this one costs black and a red for a battle siege. When Invasion of Azgol enters the battlefield, target player sacrifices a creature or a planeswalker and loses 1 life. So we call that an edict effect. Sorcery speed is not great, but it's not that far off what I would expect to pay for an edict that can take out a creature or a planeswalker.
And the 1 extra point of life just because.
Right, so I'm getting something that's worth a card right away for black and a red. And then I see there's 4 defense counters on the Invasion of Azgol, so I have the option to at some point also attack this. They call that defeating a battle. Then I get the backside, which is a creature, the Ashen Reaper. It is a 2/1 menace at the beginning of your end step. If a permanent was put from the battlefield into a graveyard this turn, you put a +1/+1 counter on the Ashen Reaper. So possibly, if you flip this the same turn that you cast the invasion, you're going to get that counter right away. You're going to get a 3/2 menace that gradually gets more and more menacing.
So, battles, I actually like them. But I tend to like new stuff. Like, I tend to like innovation. I think this is a space that hasn't been explored. I think this is sort of what planeswalkers should have been, in that if they force you into playing into the board to get additional effects instead of just relying on removal to make sure they're clear. So when you're playing a mid-range deck and you're attacking your opponent with like 2/1/1s, you don't feel you're making progress towards winning the game. That game is more than likely going to end up being won by concession or by overwhelming value. Invasions give a purpose to that combat in the mid-range control deck, which I think is actually a really nice exploration of space that hasn't been seen before.
Okay, but you're choosing one specific type of deck, mid-range control, where it's probably worth more to a mid-range deck to get another resource on your side to unlock the back half of the battle. And you don't really care that you're missing an attack, right? You're essentially giving them a 4 or 5 loyalty planeswalker that you have to attack, right? That's damage that you could have sent at their face or at their other planeswalkers.
No, it's not like a planeswalker because they're getting absolutely no value out of it. Like, you can remove it as you cannot. Like, if you only care about the front side or if you're not going to win via combat, you are losing the backside, but there's no disadvantage at letting them have it for longer.
Okay, so maybe it's not a disadvantage, but it reminds me a little bit of, like, how many times has your opponent played a Wrenn and 6 and you have the option to attack that Wrenn and 6? It's on 4 loyalty. Or how many times has your opponent played a Ikoria? They have it on 6 loyalty, and you're not sure, like, is it actually worth my time to deal 6 damage to this Ikoria? It represents some resources, but maybe I'm better off just attacking them.
So that's a twofold issue. First of all, I think Wrenn and 6 is not a good example because it's never 4 damage at Wrenn and 6. If you're doing 2 a turn, it's gonna take you like 4 turns to kill a Wrenn and 6 instead of 2. Because Wrenn and 6 is exponentially going up, and so it's nullifying a lot of the damage you're doing, while something like Ikoria or an invasion is a fixed amount. Like, if I'm hitting it for 2 every turn, I know it's dead in 2 turns.
Yeah, it's not an exact example. I'm just saying, like, the Wrenn and 6, I don't need to kill it. I can imagine a game plan where I just attack their life total, but I know that if I do take the time to kill it, I get something from it. In the Wrenn and 6 example, I deny them resources. In the invasion example, I get myself an extra creature.
I mean, but that's exactly what you're looking for in a game. Like, in most scenarios, if you're playing a mid-range deck, you absolutely are not gonna care about dealing 4 points of damage to their face. Like, I would handsomely trade 4 points of damage. I would handsomely play a creature that says that I could pay for 0 cost, my opponent gains 6 life. Absolutely.
Okay.
And most decks are gonna play these sort of invasions like they are in the same slot.
Okay, so that's mid-range. What about for aggro decks?
No, I don't think aggro decks want invasions. In the same way aggro decks want them to want enchantments or artifacts, or literally any permanent that's not a creature. Aggro decks play creatures, or permanents in aggro decks are creatures.
So you would say that in general, if you're an aggro deck, it's never worth it to like try to unlock invasions to defeat battles.
I don't think you're gonna play invasions. Rather, like, yeah, you're not gonna try and unlock them because you're not gonna have them in your deck because aggro decks don't play planeswalkers.
So let me give you a scenario. So Invasion of Kaladesh, right? Let's just say that we've got 4 of this in our deck. I play on turn 1 some creature, Silver Raven or whatever, because I'm playing an Unctus deck, right?
Yeah.
On turn 2, I play my Invasion of Kaladesh, I make a Thopter. Now on turn 3, I play my signature card, Unctus the Grand Metatect. We talked about this in our last episode. I now have 4 points of flying damage that I can deal to their face, or I can deal it to the Invasion of Kaladesh to defeat the battle and unlock Aetherwing Golden Scale Flagship, which gives me this massive flying vehicle.
I think you absolutely always attack the invasion, right? Like, there's next turn you're attacking for more than 4, almost guaranteed, with only the Aetherwing.
But you're saying that aggro decks shouldn't do this. I mean, obviously, because I put the Invasion of Kaladesh into my deck, I need to get that value from it.
I think if you're playing an Unctus deck, it's super strange that you're going to be playing an aggro deck. I don't think an aggro deck can actually afford to have its values separated in instances unless it's like a sideboard card like... So if I had to compare battles to a card, they would be like Wedding Invitation. 2 sides, the second one delayed after a success in the first one. So yeah, if there's an invasion with the power of Wedding Invitation, that is like a 3-mana invasion that the front side gives you 2 1/1s, and if it flips, it's like an... Sorry, when you play it gives you like 3 1/1s, and when it flips, it becomes an Anthem, but you have to deal 5 damage. Yeah, I think it makes it play. We haven't seen invasions for aggro decks. Most of them either ramp you, or act as removal, or as another form of 2-for-1. Few of them actually play to the board efficiently, like the closest is invasion to Kaladesh that makes up 1/1.
I mean, strangely enough, the more expensive battles make more sense in aggro decks, because if I spend my first 3 turns adding creatures to the board, like real creatures, then on turn 4, I might be in a position to play a 4-mana invasion, get some effect from it, and then immediately attack and defeat the invasion to get the back half. So if you look at like some of the 4 and 5 mana invasions, like I can kind of imagine a nice play pattern where I do exactly that. I deploy creatures first and plan to invade and win the battle in the same turn. So I kind of get like a big creature with an ETB, if that makes sense, in exchange for giving them life.
Yeah.
Like there's one they just spoiled like a minute ago that was like 2 and a green and a white for like +1/+1 to your team. So there's that Anthem effect. And then when you win the battle, you get some creature that grows, right? So is that a good use of my turn on turn 4?
I mean, no, because it's... But I don't think it's a bad... It's not because battles are bad for creatures. For creature decks, is in the same way as asking, is the 4-mana Garrock for Lorwyn, which is the first ever Planeswalker, good for my mono-green aggro deck? No, it's not.
I see.
This is a random uncommon from the first set where this card is legal. Most of them are gonna be unplayable trash, or standard cards, or limited cards, with the odd exception out.
Yeah, it's definitely the theme of this set. I think they said every draft booster will have 1 invasion in it, so there's a ton of these. They're going to make limited really interesting. Because this is the 9th card type, there are some new considerations, and I just want to like get them out there so that we can start thinking about them. Inevitably, we're going to trick ourselves into building a battle deck at some point, so I just want to make sure we've checked all our boxes, dotted the I's, crossed the T's. So it is a new card type, and it's very difficult actually to interact with these.
Yeah.
There's 2 ways to do it. There's the official way, which is attacking with creatures, or dealing direct damage, but you need to have specifically direct damage that says any target.
Like Lightning Bolt.
Like Lightning Bolt, yes. A lot of the stuff like Unholy Heat will specify a creature or planeswalker that has nothing to do with battles, right? Those cannot touch a battle.
Yes.
What about other cards, right? Are these backward compatible with flickering effects, for example? That's a nice way. I mean, if it's a spell attached to a permanent, surely it would be great to just blink the invasion over and over again and get the spell effect over and over again. And it turns out there's only a few cards can do that. Flicker Wisp in Modern is probably the cleanest one. So you can imagine a 2-mana invasion into a Flicker Wisp, get the invasion again. That's nice. The best one is probably Mord's beloved Sky Noodle.
The noodle!
Yorion Sky Nomad is kind of the last playable blink any permanent effect. So this is not going to be possible in Modern, unfortunately. But in Pioneer, maybe we find enough invasions that we like that provide useful spells, and then they just sit on the battlefield until we get the Sky Noodle and just blink them all and get the spells again. Right?
You also have lines with a card that we're going to mention soon, which is Render Inert, that the play pattern of turn 2 invasion, turn 2 Render Inert is what David has described as Bone Crusher Giant.
Render Inert is a new card from this set. 2 and a black sorcery, removes 5 counters from any permanents and draws a card. So its kind of sole purpose is to defeat battles or kill planeswalkers and draw a card.
Exactly.
Apart from things that specify battles, there's a little bit that is backward compatible. There's Glissa Sunslayer, can take 3 counters off. Vampire Hexmage can take all the counters off at once, which is actually kind of interesting. Hex Parasite, Thrill Parasite, Power Conduit. I mean, these can move a couple of counters off, but that's pretty much it in terms of interacting specifically with battles by flickering or pulling the counters off. You can use blue bounce effects, things that bounce any permanent, but not everything, right? If you think, I'll just use Teferi Time Raveler and bounce my invasion. Yeah, it doesn't work, right? Teferi does not see battles. So just keep that in mind. Also, because this is not obvious from the way they're worded, you control the battle at all times. You cast the invasion, even though you're the attacker and they are the protector, it's your permanence.
And that's super important, because if your opponent was able to sacrifice it or something like that, I think it would severely nerf them, just because in some matches they would be completely unplayable. I think it's important to know that you're always the owner.
Yeah, kind of like almost like an aura curse, right? Like you attach it to them, but it's yours to do with as you like.
Yeah. So going forward, we can skip battles till we get to the specific playable ones and go back to one of the returning mechanics that we haven't seen in a while, Convoke.
Convoke means that your creatures can help cast this spell. You can tap a creature when you're playing the Convoke spell to contribute 1 mana of the appropriate color of the creature, or 1 generic mana.
Yeah, generic or the color of the creatures. Convoke has tended to be since Ravnica a Celestia mechanic, but in this set they're doing something a bit strange. They're actually giving it to a lot of colors.
Yeah, it's a teamwork mechanic, right? They said this was their top-ranking teamwork mechanic. So there you go. And I like Convoke. I mean, it's cost reduction. It leads to the potential for free spells. But when you think back of like the history of Convoke, there's not that many playable Convoke cards, which makes me wonder if I'm going to overrate these. Like I went through and I looked at all the Convoke cards, and what did we find? Well, Hogak, of course, that's more of a delve card, but it also has Convoke. Broken. Chord of Calling is the one that sees the most play, and I don't think that card is broken. It's like barely playable outside of specifically one deck.
Yeah. So Convoke hasn't seen any play lately since the Hogak ban, but I'm super excited for at least one of the cards printed, which is the one Dan has chosen as the hallmark and the exposé of Convoke, and that's Knight-Errant of Eos. We have a beautiful 4 and a white, 5 mana in total, human knight 4/4, Convoke. When it enters the battlefield, look at the top 6 cards of your library. You will reveal up to 2 creatures with the same mana value, with mana value X or less from among them, where X is the number of creatures that convoke Knight-Errant of Eos. So if you convoke this with 5 creatures, which means you pay 0 mana for it, you get a 4/4 that looks 6 deep and puts up to 2 creatures with CMC 5 or less into your hand.
So just to clarify, it always looks at the top 6 when it ETBs.
It always. And you can always get a main Maitana Ballista if all goes wrong.
So the X is only determined by... The X controls what type of creatures you're allowed to take out of the top 6.
Exactly. So I can already see myself dreaming about turn 1 Thraben Inspector, turn 2 Wall of Omens, turn 3 Seasoned Pyromancer, Convoke Knight-Errant of Eos, get a Solitude and a Fury, win the game.
All right. I mean, that's a very value-heavy line. This costs the exact same as Venerated Loxodon. That's also 4 and a white to Convoke. And that's one of the cards that, you know, has seen a lot of success in Standard, but not in Modern, not in Pioneer. So it's almost like a direct competition between Venerated Loxodon and Knight-Errant in terms of if I did all the work to set up a 4 and a white Convoke creature that's a 4/4, which would I rather have? Would I rather have +1/+1 to all my team, or would I rather have 2 creatures in my hand?
Yeah. I think I would. I think they're playing at different shells, right? Like the Loxodon was in that Loxobot super fast to the ground, and I can see this more in a. I see this more in most cases as a 2-mana 4/4 that looks for 2 creatures with CMC 3 or less. Like you tap down 2 or 3 creatures, generally 3, and play this as a 2-drop. A creature on turn 1, a creature on turn 2, one of them dies, it's fine. You play a creature on turn 3. That allows you either to Convoke on turn 3, or alternatively, on turn 4, play a 2-drop and Convoke with 3 creatures. And a 4/4 is not a small size. Like, it can actually fight most of the creatures in Modern pretty efficiently. Like, this is a pretty amazing 3/1.
Okay, so the fact that it draws cards means you're seriously interested in Modern, specifically.
Yeah. And, like, I can also see this in Pioneer 100%. Like, turn 1 Thraben, turn 2, either the Saga that makes a Wall of Omens by turn 4, and turn 3 any creature, try to Convoke this on turn 3/4 as a value engine.
So I wanted to start with the Knight-Errant because I think it's the best of them. I will say that all of the Convoke stuff is attractive, and
yeah,
I know, knowing myself, that I'm going to overrate them. Like, they look like they're so free, and yet...
so hard.
And yet, like, Convoke has not been good, right? Because it is so hard. Exactly. It's very hard to keep creatures in play, and if they are in play, you should probably just be attacking with them. This is like the party dilemma. It's just not easy to get creatures in play.
One of the creatures I think will shine in Pioneer with the Knight-Errant of Eos is the 1/1 that's like a Raise the Alarm on a stick. That's not actually a Raise the Alarm, but a creature that makes 2 1/1s with flash.
Resolute Reinforcements, is that what it's called?
Yeah, like something like turn 1 Thraben, turn 2 Resolute allows you to Convoke this on turn 3 just with that and having a spare mana or 2. Either you play a 2-drop and you Convoke with 4, or you can Convoke this with 3 and play a 1-drop afterwards.
But that's the thing, right? Like, that's a weak card, and every time David puts it into a list, I'm like, that's a weak card, let's cut that card. If you really want to go hard on Convoke, you have to, like, be willing to play junkers like that, you know, that just add bodies to the board, and I don't know if that's worth it, but...
So what I think about what's great about Knight-Errant of Eos is, so in Pioneer there's a bit of an issue lacking cards like Ephemerate in that having creatures on board does not... So the lack of efficient ways to utilize your low-budget creatures in Pioneer removes the potential energies some of them have. A Seasoned Pyromancer in Modern just standing on itself on a board, it's scary in the presence of Undying effects, or an Ephemerate effect, or similar effects that are gonna exponentialize its value. That doesn't happen in Pioneer. A 1/2 in Pioneer tends to just die a 1/2 until a Yorion pops into the board. These sort of creatures are the ones that allow you to play dirtily creatures because they actually work as a 2/1. Your opponent has to kill your Thrabens and your Resolute Reinforcements if they are afraid of a Knight-Errant of Eos on curve. Because, killing or not, turn 1 Thraben, turn 2 Resolute Reinforcements into this on turn 3 is 7 power on board by turn 3 for only 4 mana that actually nets you 2 cards. Like, you play turn 1 a creature, turn 2 a creature, turn 3 a creature, and you use 0 resources. The clue gave you a card back, and this gave you 2 cards back. So you have 7 power on board for literally free of card advantage.
So what I'm hearing from you is, A, this card is actually super powerful. B, don't think you need 5 creatures, right? It's totally fine to just Convoke off 2 or 3 creatures as long as you built your deck in such a way that X equals 2 or 3 is still likely to get 2 creatures off the trigger.
Yeah.
You can spend your third turn paying 3 mana and tapping 2 creatures. That's still fine. You get a 4/4 that just drew 2 cards. That's insane.
Yeah. Even if it draws 1 card, because my only problem with this is, of course you're playing this in a shell that's almost Collected Company-like. Failing on this is a lot less terrible than failing on Coco because you're getting a 4/4 at least.
Yeah.
Like when you miss on a Coco, you pay 4 mana for nothing. Here you might pay 3 mana for a 4/4 that misses. But as long as you can get one creature out of the trigger, even if it's a tutor, I think it's great.
All right, so Knight-Errant of Eos, very good example of Convoke. We're going to see others that are less powerful than this, but they're all attractive. And, you know, the first one they spoiled were all blue, and I'm like, we just did Unctus week. Unctus with Convoke is very, very attractive to me. So there's going to be some synergies to explore. There's going to be a lot more to say about Convoke as we see more of the cards. So that's a returning mechanic. The second new mechanic beyond battles is called Incubate. Incubate generates an extra game object. We love game objects. How does it work? Well, a creature will tell you to incubate followed by a number. So incubate 2, incubate 3. When you do that, you create an incubator token and put 2 or 3 +1/+1 counters on it. The incubator doesn't do anything, but it has the ability to pay 2 generic mana and transform it. Then it becomes a 0/0 Phyrexian artifact creature. So it's almost like you're getting like a little egg. The egg is going to become a 2/2. You have to actually pay the 2 mana to crack the egg, but once you do that, it's transformed. It's not even summoning sick at that point. You could just attack right away with your 0/0 Phyrexian that has 2 +1/+1 counters on it. So the cleanest example is this card, Norn's Inquisitor. 1 and a white, creature, Phyrexian Knight. It's a 1/1. When Norn's Inquisitor enters, incubate 2. So you're going to get that 1 incubator token with 2 +1/+1 counters on it. Norn's Inquisitor also says whenever a permanent you control transforms into a Phyrexian, it gets an additional +1/+1 counter.
I actually like this, but if only it was cost 2 mana and it had like make a 1/1 that if you pay 2 it became a 2/2. It feels so clunky as a 2 mana 1/1.
I know, it's just off curve, it's undersized. If this were actually Thraben Inspector, my gosh, that would be so good, right?
Why can't we ever get better Thraben Inspector?
All right, so where do you rank incubators compared to all the other game objects?
So I think incubators might be one of the most powerful game objects, like by a mile. I think my ranking for the game objects might be a bit weird. So, game objects, we have treasure, food, clue, blood, and what's the new name? Egg? I'm going with egg.
Eggs, yeah.
So I think treasure is first, clue is second, egg is third, blood is fourth, and fifth is food, of course.
I would put blood ahead of clues, for sure.
See, that's why I said mine was going to be a bit spicy.
I would say blood is ahead of clues, and I think incubators are probably worth more than clues as well. Do you agree with that?
So would I rather pay 2 mana for a 2/2 or 2 mana for a card? I think that really depends on the deck you're playing, right?
It does, and I think it also depends on whether the 2/2 has haste or not. Like, it has haste if you're attacking. If you're just defending, it doesn't matter that it has haste.
What I like about the Incubate is that any other game object, you can actually pay for it at instant speed, which I assume you would not have been able to, just based on the power level of previous cards. Also, Norn's Inquisitor has one of the best arts I have seen in years. It's goddamn amazing.
Yes.
It reminds me of the Knights of Wrenn in Star Wars if they had actually been done successfully. Knights of Wrenn, but it works. Knights of Norn.
So yeah, paying 2 to get a guaranteed 2/2 creature, but that's all it can be. Unless you're going to do some funny stuff, right? Like you can proliferate, you can do all kinds of weird stuff with manipulating the size of these counters.
Super relevant to notice, these are not actually 2/2s, these are 0/0s with 2 +1/+1 counters.
Yeah.
So those are things to at least take into consideration.
We should also note on the card Norn's Inquisitor that there is a Phyrexian tribal theme in this set, and this could be part of it, right? It's a Phyrexian, it generates Phyrexians.
Yeah, this creates 2 Phyrexians, which with a lore or anything actually adds up. And that leads us to our actually third new mechanic. Yeah, third new mechanic actually. We had battles, we had it's not populate, it's incubate, and we have backup, which for example we can see in Doomskar Warrior. Doomskar Warrior, 2 and double green for a 4/3 human warrior with backup 1. Backup reads, when this creature enters the battlefield, put X +1/+1 counters on target creature. So if with backup 1, you put 1 counter on target creature, and that creature gains all the abilities below backup. In this case, Doomskar Warrior reads backup 1, trample, when this creature deals combat damage to a player or battle, Look at that many cards from the top of your library. You may reveal a creature or land card from among them, put him into your hand. So when Doomskar Warrior enters the battlefield, target creature gets a +1/+1 counter, trample, and whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, look at that many cards and put a creature or land into your hand. It provides another creature with counters and all its abilities for a turn.
So the way they used this design was actually pretty cool. Like, they put it on a lot of creatures that cost 4 or 5 mana and have really dangerous, like, attacking triggers. So the way it will play out is you're going to play your Doomskar Warrior, and they're going to see, okay, I don't want the Doomskar Warrior hitting me. I'm not going to just let them punk me every turn and get a free creature. And yet, if they have a removal spell, they first have to use it on the creature you backed up, right? Let's say you play a 3-drop first. You play the Doomskar Warrior, back up your, I don't know, what is it, a old growth troll or something, or some random 3-drop. Now that's threatening to draw a card. It's going to get trample, it's going to get bigger, and it's going to hit them and draw a card. So they have to use a removal spell on that first. And then you still have Doomskar Warrior, which hasn't actually gotten you a card yet, but it's threatening to, and it demands another answer from them.
Yeah. So it transforms a creature that might... So this works super well with ETB creatures or creatures that are not threatful on its own, like... what's a good 3-drop that... So, for example, a Skyclave Apparition. You have a Skyclave Apparition on 3, and turn 4 you play a Doomskar Warrior. Now you have a 3-3 that if your opponent isn't able to block it, they actually have to waste a removal on a creature that was already a 2/1. To stop you from looking at the top 3 and placing a creature or land from among them into your hand. And not only that, they then have to deal with the 4-3 that has trample and is about to do it again next turn. They work super well with Kessig Malcontents. No, sorry, not Malcontents, Kessig...
Sure, why not? Why not Kessig Malcontents?
What's the name of the 3-mana 2/3 that has haste and provides things with haste?
Oh, with the Reckless Stormseeker. Oh gosh, you could get 2 triggers in 1 turn? My god.
You play turn 3 Stormseeker, this on turn 4, and now your opponent has to kill that Stormseeker because you're gonna swing for a bunch.
And that's an amazing curve, actually. So you're gonna swing for 7 damage, 8 damage. You're gonna get 2 triggers. You're gonna get 2 more creatures off the top of your deck.
On everything with trample.
Yeah. The implementation is cool. I think the mechanic is actually pretty cool. It's on expensive creatures, so they're kind of on curve toppers, so they're not going to compete for slots in that many decks, but I do like them. I like the idea of it.
Yeah, I actually really enjoy backup, and I think it's one of the best blood mechanics in a while, especially with the creatures we're seeing, all heavily in the curve, all creatures that would generally suck because you're never connecting with a 4-mana 4/3. But forcing your opponent to use a removal on its way is one of the best ways to try to connect with a 4-mana 4/3. So I applaud this design.
Yeah, they kind of have haste, they kind of have ETBs, depending on how you look at it.
Exactly. It's a 0 haste.
Yeah. Split over 2 cards, which is nice.
Yeah. Which leads us to finally go and look into the specific cards from this set. We haven't selected that many, we're actually just gonna mention the most playable ones. We might not get through all of them today, but at least we're gonna clear the early drops.
We're not even gonna come close to getting through all of them.
No.
No. Today we're just like covering the mechanics. Kudos to the design team for sweet new mechanics, and we'll just see what we find. Starting off with the cheapest cards, as we do.
So, Elspeth Smite, tell us about it, Dan.
Elspeth Spite? Elspeth Smite.
Elspeth Spite, yeah.
3 damage. It deals 3 damage to target attacking or blocking creature. If that creature would die this turn, exile it instead. It costs a single white. It's an instant. This is the biggest version of this effect. We tend to think of this as only for limited, right? Damage just to attackers and blockers. It's always too expensive. It's just too whatever. But this is actually great rate, and it exiles.
Is this able to actually see competitive play? Like, is 3 damage enough? Have we reached the point where this is actually valuable?
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. I mean, probably not for Modern. Probably. For Pioneer, like, it's great when it works until suddenly it doesn't work and you curse the day you put this in your deck. If it misses, if it forces you to let them flip their Graveyard Trespasser or something because you couldn't actually proactively kill it, you're going to just be so angry at yourself for playing this. But if it's killing my Vengevines, I'm going to be so angry. So there's that. All right, just a card to be aware of. We'll see. Never seen this effect at this cheap of a cost for this big of an effect, so always good to keep an eye on those. The next card is an honorary 1-drop.
Honorary 1-drop, we can both agree, might be a bit, I don't want to say delusional, just optimistic.
Well, here's the thing, More. There's no other 1-drops. Like, I've looked for the entire spoiler. There's no 1-drops in this set. There's literally nothing else.
So if we consider this a 1-drop, we have 2.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
We gotta have something that costs 1 mana. Everything else, like a team up, 7 mana for a ape and a Fibblethip or something. I don't know. This is a card you might actually cast in a duel of magic. So I will talk about briefly about the referee squad. 2 and a blue, Homunculus. It's a 2/2 with Convoke. Has Vigilance, and when referee squad enters the battlefield, tap target creature an opponent controls and put a stun counter on it. So this is like a Frost Lynx. It freezes it for a turn. Very, very much a limited effect, a limited stats of creatures, and yet it has Convoke. So if you're going to build a Convoke deck, right, if you're going to put Convoke payoffs in, I use that term very loosely, what is a Convoke payoff? Basically just Unctus so far, but maybe we'll think of something else that triggers when you become tapped or that pays you off for convoking things. This is going to be one of your cheapest options.
Like the 2-mana Throne?
The 2-mana Throne, yes. Well, I think there's another card in here. Maybe it's the Commander. But there's a card that like draws a card when you convoke. I don't remember exactly what it is. Keep an eye on the referee squad. Looks silly, looks very cute, but it might actually be good enough. And I'll probably be putting it into some decks, to be honest.
All right.
All right. That's it for 1-drops. On to the 2s.
On to the 2s, we start with a new battle. Well, all battles are new. Invasion of Tarkir. All of the battles, of course, are showing the fighting between the defendant forces and the invading Phyrexians in every single plane. In Tarkir, we are going to be focusing on dragons, etc. And in every plane, we're going to be seeing the defendant side against the coming Phyrexians. So here, Invasion of Tarkir, of course, it's going to be dragon tribal base. 1 and a red for a 5 defense counter battle siege. Is that how we're going to name them?
I mean, it doesn't make any sense more. It really... I like how you pause in your explanation because it actually does not make any sense mechanically.
So the problem is, if you're playing this and attacking them, it involves you considering yourself the Phyrexian attacking Tarkir because the upside you're getting is a Tarkir upside.
Exactly.
So flavor-wise, it's strange because why is my opponent defending this instead of the other way around?
Exactly. They're the protector of the siege. What does that even mean?
No, that makes sense. That makes sense as long as we are assuming... So here comes my problem with invasions. I'm gonna expose my problem with battles right now. This set, Phyrexia should have won. Alright? In this set, Phyrexia should have won, and then we had another set where they lost. I don't care about that. This had to be Infinity War, not Endgame. Why did the battle set need to be Infinity War? Okay, that's easy. Because we're playing as Phyrexia when we invade. We invade, and we get a Phyrexian payoff. We shouldn't get Defiant Thundermaw, which is the name of the dragon on the other side. We should get Corrupted Thundermaw. We should get a Phyrexian payoff. We are Phyrexia, opponent defense as a plane of its own, and we get a Phyrexian payoff. Right now we are attacking and getting a defendant payoff because that makes no sense. Why are we attacking and getting a payoff from the defendant side when we are the one attacking? That makes no sense.
I agree.
Alright.
I agree. And the collective story that they're telling is that Phyrexia lost literally every single plane they invaded, which is just sad when you think about it.
Alright, no. What was actually happening? No, that makes some sense from the point of the story because they were winning until all the... But the angels from once New Capenna won, the angels from there rallied against the other sides. Like Phyrexia won most battles, but lost the war.
Did they though? How come it flips to a Tarkir-sided creature?
I don't know. That's my issue.
Can I also say on this subject, like they butchered the English language here. Like you do not defeat a battle. That does not make any sense. You win a battle, you lose a battle. You defeat a battle? You attack a siege? I mean, maybe a military historian will be like, oh yes, well technically the people laying siege to the city have to build defensive fortifications around the city so that they don't get attacked from within the city, but that doesn't make any freaking sense, all right? You are laying siege, you are the attacker. It's exactly like Mord said. This was just a massive, massive flavor...
It's weird.
Cluster, we'll just put it that way. A cluster of flavor.
Alright, so 1 red for 5 loyalty, 5 defense counters battle, when Invasion of Tarkir enters the battlefield, reveal any number of dragon cards from your hand. When you do, it deals X damage +2 to any other target, where X is the number of cards revealed this way. X can be 0. So this is at worst a 2-mana shock as a sorcery to any target at able to up. This is a sorcery Omen of the Forge worst case scenario. But the payoff is actually quite amazing. It's a 4/4 flying trample that whenever a dragon you control attacks, it shocks any target. That's quite good.
So it takes 5 damage to defeat the battle, but you get this amazing Defiant Thundermaw on the backside. 4/4 flying trample that just lays waste to things, and it wins as many battles as you want. This seems like one of the more playable battles. It's a mythic, naturally. Here's my question for you, Mort. Are you supposed to put this in a Dragons deck, or are you supposed to be like, that's a trap, we know the Dragons suck, let's just use this as a shock, and then when we're ready to, if we want to, we can defeat the battle with, that 2 and a black card you mentioned to unlock the Defiant Thundermaw? Technically, you don't need any Dragons, right? Because X is allowed to be 0. You can just play this
as a bad shock.
As a bad shock that maybe becomes a 4/4.
I think for this to be playable, you actually need to be playing other dragons. I'm not saying you have to play this in complete aggro dragon tribal, but I think they actually a deck with some dragons, like some sort of mid-range dragon deck. This dealing 3 or 4 damage is already enough, and if you have 1 or 2 dragons on the board and this flips, attacking with 2 dragons and just assigning 4 points of damage as almost your desire is amazing.
Not sure I agree with the Dragon Tribal thing, but it is worth noting that this is also probably the best battle for like the all battles deck, because your Invasion of Tarkir is allowed to target other battles, right? So you can just directly shoot. It can actually kill other copies of itself. And then the creature you get on the back side is so good at winning battles. I think this wins almost every battle we've seen, right? If you attack a battle with a Defiant Thundermaw, point the extra shock at the battle, you probably win the battle immediately. Just using that spell, right, the 2 and a black, remove 5, draw a card to unlock this creature and then just go nuts on your battle deck, makes some sense to me.
Yeah. I'm not saying this is going to see a lot of play, but if any of the lower cost one does, this at least seems like the one that should.
Yeah, I think it's a card that I want to own 4 copies if they're cheap. I don't know. We'll see how that goes. The next card on our list is also a battle. It's technically a 2-drop, but it's not really a 2-drop. Tell me about the Invasion of Ikoria.
So, Finale of Devastation at home. Green and an X or a 6 defense counter battle. When it enters the battlefield, search your library and or graveyard for a non-human creature card with mana value X or less and put it into the battlefield. So, same cost as Finale of Devastation, but with a non-human clause. However, if you get to flip it via dealing 6 damage, it transforms into an 8/8 with reach that gives your non-humans super trample. You can actually they can assign damage as if they weren't blocked.
So the backside is called Zilortha, Apex of Ikoria. Zilortha was the Godzilla box topper. And unfortunately for this card, this is a legendary backside, which means you will kind of get punished if you try to play too many invasions. You can only flip one at a time because the backside is a legendary dinosaur. However, this has combo written all over it, right?
Yeah.
What it cannot do is get Asmo. That's a big bummer.
That's a bit sad.
But what it can do is it can get Vampire Hexmage. That will cost you green, and 2. You'll immediately get the Hexmage into play, and then whenever you want, you sack the Hexmage. It's not Dark Depths, but it is Godzilla, right? Godzilla's okay. It's not as good as Merit Lage. And it becomes that 8/8 reach. That itself is like still not quite worth it, right? 4 mana for a giant creature is not worth it. But you get that flexibility too, right? Like if you're not ready to do that yet, you maybe just get a Dryad Arbor on turn 2, or you get some 1-drop that you want on turn 3. It searches the graveyard just like the Green Finale, so all you actually need is 1 Vampire Hexmage somewhere in the deck, and then that, in theory, can unlock all copies of Invasion of Ikoria that you draw throughout the game.
Yeah.
But is that just too... I mean, we're just like lost in the sauce. We're just having fun flipping battles and not actually winning the game. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think it's gonna be great. Just a 4-mana 8/8 is not what you want to be doing nowadays in Magic. But maybe someday it is. I hope. Maybe. We can pray. So we move downwards, sadly abandoning battles as they weren't that much of something to love. But we go from a card that a few minutes ago said maybe next to his name, and now it doesn't. So Dan, tell me about Botanical Brawler.
Green-white creature, Elemental Warrior. 0/0 trample and Botanical Brawler enters with 2 counters. So it's a 2/2 trample for green and a white. Whenever one or more +1/+1 counters are put on another permanent you control, if it's the first time +1/+1 counters have been put on that permanent this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on Botanical Brawler. So really weird wording. It almost sounds like you can only do this once a turn, but that's not quite what it's saying. It's saying it will only trigger once per other thing you have that enters with counters. And specifically, it's only looking for +1/+1 counters. So it's not going to trigger from a battle.
Battles.
It's not going to trigger from a planeswalker. It will trigger from like a hangerback walker or just anything with graft or whatever. Some creature that you played that had a counter on it. That will grow your brawler. If you distribute +1/+1 counters onto your creatures, the brawler will grow by 1 for each one that you see. So I'm a little bit iffy on this. It seemed like to me that you would really need a hardened scales in play for this to be worth it.
Oh yeah.
David disagrees though. He's got some ideas for like turn 1, mana elf, then you play a Nissa on turn 2, Nissa Voice of Zendikar, and then you play this brawler and do the Nissa -2 and get all these counters because the Nissa put counters on this, plus your other 2 creatures, which grew this in turn. I'm not sure. I think it's like not quite enough. Like if it grew off the Nissa loyalty, like if it could just grow from playing as Planeswalker, I'd be a little more optimistic.
So I'm going to ask you a super tough question. Is this creature Phyrexian or non-Phyrexian?
Oh boy.
I'm going to say not because it doesn't have Phyrexian in the subtype, but look at the art.
It looks Phyrexian, but it looks like it's also destroying a Phyrexian. It synergizes with Incubate, so it also seems like it should be.
It sounds and seems so Phyrexian-like, but it isn't. It's just weird. Like, it's off.
Like, it triggers off incubation tokens, so it seems like the perfect candidate for Phyrexianization.
Yeah. I'm gonna go back and say, I do love the design of battles. Even if I don't love the flavor of them, I love the design, and I think it's something that actually I really like. I think it's... Making combat matter for non-aggro decks is, I think, super relevant. And I think it's intriguing the way they're doing it. Maybe flavorfully they belonged in another order, or the payoff should have been a Phyrexian payoff because they are like fighting back, but that's another issue.
Sometimes it takes a failed hardened scales 2-drop to make you realize how much you love battles. Like, you know what? I do like battles after all, because they're not the Botanical Brawler.
Because they could be as worse as the Botanical Brawler, but they are not.
Well, if that's the case, let's talk about a battle. Here's the one that I actually think is pretty cool. It's a Gruul battle called Invasion of Ergamon. What's Ergamon? I've never heard of this place.
Ergamon, if I'm not mistaken, is the plane where... Who goes to Ergamon? I think Ergamon might never exist. Like, besides... So, there was a lot of planes that were involved in Plane Chase 2012 for the first time.
Okay.
And it always involved the fighting between two planeswalkers named as Warsal and Tomil as they battled through the planes. So yeah, we have a lot of new planes we have never seen. A few we have barely seen, and we're looking back again, which I love. And I hope we get to mention some of them. But yeah, a lot of them, this is going to be the first time for most players. There's, for example, the Invasion of Segovia, which is the tiny plane, which I love.
All right, so Ergamon, beloved callback to Plane Chase 2012.
Yes.
Red and a green, battle siege with 5 defense. Cheap to cast, but difficult to defeat. When Invasion of Ergamon enters the battlefield, create a treasure token. We like those. Then you may discard a card. If you do, draw a card.
The best game object.
You get a game object and a rummage. You get everything that I like. Game objects and moving cards between zones.
What's not to love?
Exactly. How much is that front side worth, would you say?
No, that's worth 2 mana. Like, that value at 1 mana would be completely insane. At 2 mana, it might be like slightly overcosted, but like in the same way a lot of cards are a bit weak on 2 mana, but at 1 would be completely insane, right?
I think that's, yeah, it had to cost 2 now that you put it that way. I don't know if it's worth 2.
This couldn't cost 1.
Couldn't cost 1.
I think it's cost a lot more than 1, but a bit less than 2.
So just by itself, the front side, I mean, it gives you that game object, the treasure. It gives you that rummage. It sets up something like, I don't know, Zombify or something on turn 3. Or, it just ramps you into something else on turn 4. The backside, though, it's a 3/4 Rhino. It's called Truga Cliffcharger. So again, this invasion has 5 defense. So if you want the Rhino, you got to deal 5 to this invasion. 3/4 trample. When Truga Cliffcharger enters a battlefield, you may discard a card. If you do, search your library for a land or battle. Reveal it, put it into your hand, shuffle.
Yeah.
So it's another rummage effect. It tutors for a battle.
Or any land.
So it seems like it's telling me to just get another copy of the invasion, right? Instead of killing them, I will just make boars. Or not boars, rhinos. It looks like a boar. I don't know why this is a rhino. Because
it has a horn.
Guess.
What is a rhino but a big boar with a horn in the front? Now, more importantly, it has no fur on the sides. Rhino has that porous skin like an elephant, and that has that sort of skin rather than the fur of a boar.
To me, this looks exactly like Pumbaa from The Lion King.
But Pumbaa has hair on the sides.
This has hair. He's got the hair, he's got the spotted pattern. This is obviously Pumbaa.
On the sides, you have skin. Pumbaa has hair. Pumbaa has fur.
So does the Truga Cliffcharger.
Look at those skinny legs. Hairless legs. Not even a Brazilian can get you those results.
So they previewed this alongside another 2-drop that I think is meant to play exactly with it. So let's also look at the Bloodfeather Phoenix. Tell me about this card board.
So 1 red for a 2/2 creature Phoenix with flying. The Bloodfeather Phoenix can't block, and whenever an instant or sorcery you control deals damage to an opponent or battle, you may pay red. If you do, it returns from the graveyard to the battlefield with haste. So a super annoying 2/2 flyer that can get back with haste whenever you ping your opponent or anything.
2/2 flying that cannot block, right? Its sole purpose in life is to harry planeswalkers, to chip away at life totals, to win battles. And get sacrifice, I guess, if you want to do that, but it's actually kind of annoying to bring this back, right? You have to point an instance or sorcery spell at an opponent, which...
Or battle.
So it's really encouraging you to, deal damage directly to battles and then bring this back with haste. It's better coming back from the graveyard because it has haste. The front side does not have haste. Okay, so now imagine this Bloodfeather Phoenix together with the invasion that we just talked about, Invasion of Ergamon.
You get to lure it away with invasion, you get an incentive to use a bolt on the invasion, and you actually get a treasure to pay for a red. Turn 1, Lava Dart your opponent's Ragavan, turn 2, invasion, make a treasure, discard Phoenix, Lava Dart your opponent, get this back with the treasure, concede.
Well, I mean, if we're going directly to Modern, then yeah, the bar is going to be high. I think it's more like, it gives you the option to just chain Invasion of Ergamons together. Yeah. I don't know if you should, but you probably also play Invasion of Tarkir in the same deck. It's interesting for sure.
It's at least worth to look into, I think. It's not bad.
All right, and with that, we go on to the 3-drops.
We go on to the 3-drops, and we start with one you absolutely at least show Twitter that you love.
It's all about the content, baby.
So we have Wrenn and Realmbreaker. Also, rest in peace, Wrenn. She gave her life for the cause. One of the few planeswalkers that actually died. But at least we got a sweet 1 mana, 1 and double green, so 3 mana legendary planeswalker Wrenn. Enters with 4 loyalty counters and has the passive ability. Lands you control tap at any 1 color of mana, so it gives you that chromatic lantern effect. Alongside a +1 that up to 1 target land you control becomes a 3/3 elemental creature with vigilance, hexproof, and haste until your next turn. It's still a land. -2 with 3 cards, you may put a permanent card from among them into your hand. -7, you get an emblem with you may play lands and cast permanent spells from your graveyard.
So the most important thing to understand is the +1 does not untap the land. I think most people just read that and assumed that it did.
It would be insane if it did.
It would be insane. That would be mana ramp. That would be like a haste attacker on turn 3. You can do all that on turn 4 if you want to. So that raises the question, where is the power of this card and why did I write a gigantic Twitter thread about it? I refer you to our Twitter feed. We're at FaithlessMPG. Give us a follow. Why not? I went through a bunch of decks in Pioneer that I thought might be able to make use of the card or at least should consider playing it. But where I landed was that it's really all about the -2. The -2 doesn't seem that powerful at first glance, but you can do it twice, right? So if you're thinking of this as maybe it's similar to the -2 on Liliana of the Last Hope, but she only does it once, right? She can't immediately downtick twice, whereas Wrenn and Realmbreaker can do that. And if that's the case, it's actually on rate with a lot of other draw spells that people play.
I actually really like this as a fair card. Even if you're not going for the -2 twice, I really appreciate that they finally went ahead and make this sort of effect with hexproof on the land.
So that's the other thing, right? A hexproof land is actually a combo piece, specifically in Pioneer, less so in Modern.
Not so in Modern, but a 3/3 with hexproof in Modern is actually a good way to protect the planeswalker, right? You just you swing for 3 with Vigilance and just let it stay there, blocking Ragavans, blocking anything.
It's a decent brawler. I don't want to risk a land in combat for sure, but if I'm going to combo, right, there's 2 commonly played combos in Pioneer. I take that back. There's 1 commonly played combo and 1 retired combo. Transmogrify combo. This deck is pretty good. It's tier 2, tier 2.5, but the problem with Transmogrify is that you just can't cast it if they have mana open. They will just fatal push your thing, you will be very sad, and you won't get your Atraxa. If you have a hexproof creature land, suddenly the entire equation is flipped on its head. Now it's almost guaranteed to resolve. Second deck is Jeskai Ascendancy, where you'll find them for sure playing Sylvan Caryatids. We're not cutting those, but they'll often play something like Paradise Druid, right? The kind of crappy 2/1 hexproof. Again, Wrenn and Realmbreaker is okay, there's your Paradise Druid, but it's also a dig through time, and it also fuels your dig through time.
I think it's super interesting. Either you play this as a -2/-2 or a +1/+1/+1, -2/+1 -2. It has a lot of combination where it's just amazing. I think the passive is really meh. Not quite so in Pioneer.
Yeah, the passive sucks. Yeah.
In Pioneer it might be a lot more relevant than in any other format. And I don't hate it at all. It's just good and efficient.
So decks that I listed as possibilities, Abzan Greasefang, where this is kind of like a Grisly Salvage with upside. You can put it into your mono green deck. Elephant of Wrenn is going to dig you towards your combo pieces very quickly. And again, you don't have to kill it. You can go -2 +1 -2, just like Mort is saying. You might consider this just in red-green boats in the vehicles deck. It's a on-curve threat. It threatens to find your chariots and good stuff faster. It could go into green-black mid-range. I mentioned the Transmogrify combos already. Could go into a graveyard deck, right? It's a great way to fill the graveyard. So there's a lot of potential homes. The problem is that in all these scenarios, the mana's a little tricky. Green 1 kind of sucks, and you really don't want to play this if you're behind, because there's always that fail state that you'll just -2 once and it will die. That's true for all planeswalkers. If you can only activate them once before they die, they're not good. So then it's okay, well, what do? I play it and I plus, I take a hit, and then I just sort of use it as this weird hexproof land until I'm ready to turn the corner. That's okay. It's not the worst. It's an interesting card for sure. Very interesting card.
Yeah, I like it. To the very least, to say it will require some testing in multiple formats. But with that being said, I think we're reaching the end of our time. Am I right?
I think so. Yeah. I think we're going to have to cut it here with Wrenn and Realmbreaker. I definitely refer you to our Twitter page for more hype on the card.
It's a strong card to finish off, but I'm glad to say I don't even think it's the best card in the set. I'm super glad for a lot of cards that are coming, that you will be able to hear in the next episode. Chrome Host Seed Shark, I know it has you and David on lock. Halo Forager is something I love as a concept. And don't even get me talking about, what's the name of this card that I love for absolutely no logical reason? Oh, Invasion of Ravnica.
So we will leave it here. We will be back in just a few days for part 2 of our set review. So stay tuned for that, and we'll see you next time.
Of course, have a lovely night, everybody. Bye-bye. See you then.
This concludes part 1 of our Brewer's Guide to March of the Machine. Tune in next time for part 2 of our full set review for Modern and Pioneer. If you enjoyed this podcast, please let us know. Leave us a review in your podcast app and visit patreon.com/faithlessbrewing to join our Discord community and help support the show. That's all for today. Stay safe and we'll see you next time.